Bizarre Brain Comics. Welcome to my first video on Bizarre Brain Comics. Forgive my inexperience and relative lack of slickness, you might say. All I have to work with is my cell phone, and that's a few years old. I'll tell you about this. This project is intended to just talk about some old comics and show you some old comics and talk about the creators. Now, what I'm going to start with is this little book right here. Little book. This is a reprint of Superman Comics #1. And this is from 1979. This is known as tabloid sized. And in the 70s and early 80s, both Marvel and DC Comics produced a lot of these. They were relatively inexpensive. They were kind of unique. They were kind of done away with when they started producing regular, what's known today as graphic novels. What I wanted to talk about are the creators. Now, of course, Superman was created by two Jewish boys from Cleveland, Ohio. That's Jerry Siegel, the writer, and Joe Shuster, who's the artist. A lot of people, especially those in comics or Superman fans in general, will recognize those names or are already aware of them, but some of you may not know about them. Now, these boys grew up together in Cleveland and met in high school and started working together. They're both very interested in science fiction. Read a lot of the science fiction pulp magazines. And Jerry Siegel came up with a character he called the Superman. And that was with a hyphen between super and man. But he didn't make him up out of whole cloth. There were some very strong influences into his creation. Of course, we know he's Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper. And he's also Superman, the Man of Steel, the Man of Tomorrow, who happens to live in the Fortress of Solitude up around the North Pole region. One of their primary influences was a book by Philip Wiley called Gladiator, in which the scientist conducted experiments on his infant son and produced a man when he grew up with superpowers. He was basically had the same superpowers as Superman when he first appeared. Super strength, increased durability. His skin was bulletproof, and he could leap great distances. And in fact, the character fought in World War I, which tells you about that. I read it. It was a good book, taking into account the time and everything. And another great influence were the pulp series of Doc Savage. Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, who that's Clark Savage Jr., that is. And he had a Fortress of Solitude in the Arctic Circle. So you can see some strong influences. He was the Man of Bronze. Superman is the Man of Steel. And they both had Fortress of Solitude. And, it was also influenced by the John Carter of Mars stories by Edgar Rice Burroughs, best known for the creation of Tarzan. In that story, he was an Earthman who was mystically transported to the planet Mars, where he gained superpowers. Primarily just super strength because of his stronger muscles from Earth's gravity. Earth's stronger gravity compared to Mars's gravity. And if you saw that the Disney movie of John Carter, which came out a few years ago, you saw a prime example of that. And all these molded together into the creation of Superman. Now these boys, in high school, they created their own science fiction fan magazine in which Jerry Siegel wrote all the stories, oftentimes using pseudonyms, and Joe Shuster did all the artwork. And they printed them on the high school mimeograph. Unfortunately, none of these stories still exist, which is a real shame. In that book, in that magazine, fanzine, they had a story called The Reign of the Superman, in which this was Jerry Siegel's first interpretation of Superman, or iteration of Superman, rather, in which he wasn't a superhuman physical specimen. He was a superior mental specimen. I guess he had psychic powers and vast human intelligence. Then, I'll tell you more about that later. Unfortunately, like I said, no copies of that still exist, as far as anybody knows. Then they reworked the character into a figure having superhuman powers instead of supermental powers, and originally designed it as a comic strip. They tried all the syndicates in America that they could try at the time, and they were turned down by all of them. Had no luck. But they had been getting some work after high school and getting some work in the comics field at what later became DC Comics. And then it was National Periodical Publications. They wrote stories for, what was his name? For Detective Comics and stuff. Now, at this point in time, all comics were anthologies. That is, they were a book that would have a variety of stories and characters. Like a 64-page book might have 7 or 8 stories, and each one featuring different characters. Some may be action adventure, maybe detective, maybe something fantastical or historical, and others straight humor, from funny animals to kid hijinks. You never could tell. Then in 1938, the publisher was about to launch a new title. Most of the titles here had been, fun, fun comics, adventure comics, humor, sparkle, a whole variety of just generic names like that. And the title of Action Comics is quite similar in that regard. But he wanted a lead, something for the cover, something with some pizzazz and some impact. When I say he, I mean, what was his name? Donenfeld. I've forgotten his first name now. Who was apparently the publisher or editor at the comics. And Siegel and Shuster went in and sold him on the idea of Superman. He bought it. At that time, he bought it for about $150 for that first story. But remember, this was in newspaper strip format. They had to recut and paste that story and transpose it into book form. And that's what I wanted to start you with. We're going to get into a few things. Got some of my information from, and we'll be looking into this a little bit. It's the Smithsonian Book of Comic Book Comics. And this other book, The Adventures of Superman by, what's his name? George Lowther. Now, this was originally published in 1942, and this is a reprint edition from 1995, I believe it was, including illustrations, because it is a prose novel, but with illustrations by Joe Shuster. And then we'll get into it. Famous first editions. Here is a reproduction of the original cover. Superman, 10 cents. If only we could have that now. Now their comics, the standard comics are about, I think, $4.99 a piece. 64 pages, all in full color. The complete story of the daring exploits of Superman. Now look over here. Even then, they had all these ads for all kinds of silly stuff. Superman by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Now, I told you a little bit about those boys together. Now, Jerry Siegel, had one more big influence in his life for creating this character. On the streets of Cleveland, his father was shot dead, and that obviously had a big impact on teenage Jerry. And I'm sure that had a partial influence in creating a character who is bulletproof, like Superman. Now, these boys were nerdy. They were not physical specimens. They were your typical nerds. Not weak. Or not strong, rather. Just like kind of typical nerd. So their creation of Superman was the kind of thing most teenage boys have, a male power fantasy, but not necessarily that they want to have power over others. They just want to have power to stand up for themselves. That's why you get a split between Clark Kent and Superman. Well, we'll talk more about that as we go along. So, Superman by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Originally, I had wanted to use Action Comics #1, which they also did in a reprint form like this, and I must have mislaid it because I have not been able to find it. But this is close enough. This is good too. In fact, I think this basically, in whole or in part, retells, if not reprints, the story, the same story that they had in Action Comics #1. I'm going to show you this. Oh, wrong one. Put that back over here. And this here. All about Superman. And here they reprint the stuff from Action Comics #1. In part. This here's retelling and giving justification for his superpowers. But the story begins right in the middle. And this is the same story that is here in Superman 1. So therefore, I think in whole or in part, it is a reprint of that first Superman story. Now this is a really nifty little book. Tells you all about comics, has reprints some other stories, other characters. Gives you a nice little overview of comics and the history of comics. Okay, here we go. Just before the doomed planet Krypton explodes to fragments, a scientist placed his infant son within an experimental rocket ship, launching it toward Earth. Here, they do have the name Krypton, but at this point in time, his father is just a scientist. The name Jor-El, Superman's father, Lara, Superman's mother, and Kal-El, the Kryptonian name for Superman, had not come up yet. And if I remember correctly, those first appear in this book here from 1942. And then the names are spelled slightly differently. Instead of EL for the L name, it's just a -L. When the vessel reached our planet, the child was found by an elderly couple, the Kents. Look, Mary, it's a child. The poor thing, it's been abandoned. See, Mary. They didn't have Ma and Pa Kent, did not yet have the name of Jonathan and Martha. I believe they were, at this point, they were known as, mentioned in this book, Eben, for Ebenezer, and Mary. The infant was turned over to an orphan asylum, where it astounded the attendants with its feats of strength. Now this gets me. Orphan asylum. What we would call an orphanage. I'm just kind of surprised Siegel used that word. And I don't also like this either, but this may just be the way they worded things back then. Where he's a baby, as an it, instead of where he astounded the attendants with his feats of strength. All the captions and dialogues is a bit on the clunky side. We couldn't get that sweet child out of our mind. We've come to adopt him, if you'll permit us. I believe it can be arranged. Phew, thank goodness. They're taking him away before he wrecks the asylum. The love and guidance of his kindly foster parents was to become an important factor in the shaping of the boy's future. Now listen to me, Clark. This great strength of yours, you've got to hide it from people, or they'll be scared of you. But when the proper time comes, you must use it to assist humanity. So these basic, very basic humanity instilled in the boy from the very beginning. Good parents. Notice already right there, he's already got the colors, red and blue. As the lad grew older, he learned to his delight that he could hurdle skyscrapers, leap an eighth of a mile, raise tremendous weights, run faster than a streamlined train, and nothing less than a bursting shell could penetrate his skin. What the? This is the 6th hypodermic needle I've broken on your skin. Try again, Doc. The passing away of his foster parents greatly grieved Clark Kent, but it strengthened the determination that had been growing in his mind. Clark decided he must turn his titanic strength into channels that would benefit mankind, and so was created Superman, champion of the oppressed, the physical marvel who had sworn to devote his existence to helping those in need. And that's just an introduction. Now's when the story actually begins. Outer waiting room of the Daily Star. Notice the Daily Star instead of the Daily Planet that we know today. Daily Star. You may see the editor now, but if you ask me, you're wasting your time. There's nothing like trying. I know I haven't had any experience, sir, but still, I think I'd make a good reporter. Sorry, fella, can't use you. Here's the editor. Now you'd think Perry White, but Perry White hadn't been created yet. This is editor George Taylor of the Daily Star, although it doesn't give his name here. In an alley, Clark removed his street clothes, revealing himself clad in the Superman costume. If I get news dispatches promptly, I'll be in a better position to help people. I've got to get that job. Superman launches himself up along the side of the building in a great leap. Now, you notice in the art, take a little break here, the artwork is, well, relatively crude compared to what one might be used to, especially the comics today. And the way the storytelling from panel to panel is different. And in fact, you can see here, his backgrounds are very brief. But Joe hadn't had a whole lot of experience at this just yet. I'm sorry, Jerry. No, Joe. That's right, Joe Shuster hadn't had a lot of experience at this yet. Well, neither had Jerry. His dialogue is very, very clunky. Within the editor's office. What's that? A mob attacking the county jail? Cover that story. So here he is. So he can't fly. He leaps up and he's hanging on, holding himself clinging to the outside of the building because he can't fly. Sounds like my big chance to impress the editor. Here's hoping I get there on time. Now, here, see, it's like a broad jump pose. It makes sense. He's leaping. He can make great leaps. But also take note of the pose. This is the pose that eventually evolved into kind of a standard flying pose. One hand forward, the other one in a fist tucked back. Often with a fist in front. Here's just an open hand. One leg up front, knee cocked. And it evolves into a more dynamic flying pose, even though here it's like that, obviously, because he's just leaping. That very moment before the county jail. Get him! Lynch the dirty dog! Again, just backgrounds are very spare. But also, you notice, his figures are strong. His line work isn't necessarily so strong, but you see the artwork. He has a pretty good general sense of anatomy. And the staging here is a good example. You see the staging. You get long shots, an occasional fairly close mid shot, but it's basically staging. As for the stage, the way you see it, everything in a longer view. A few moments later, let me go. I ain't guilty, I tell you. That's right, Sims. Beg for mercy. But it won't do you any good. Don't do this to me, please, please. Hanging's too good for you. Just as the lynching is about to begin, down hurtles a fantastic figure. Go on, scatter. What in? This prisoner's fate will be decided in a court of justice. Return to your homes. Rush him. You're begging for it. See, pretty clunky dialogue. But it gets the idea across. The crowd is astounded to find itself swept back by the lone figure. I don't know how you did it, but you've my thanks. Who are you? A reporter. Let's get the prisoner back in his cell. You saved my life, and I'm not forgetting it. I'll let you in on a red-hot story. Let's have it. They're right there. He says he's a reporter. But here he is as Superman. That should cause some problems. They hadn't thought some things through quite well enough yet. I'm being held for the murder of Jack Kennedy. How's that for a coincidence? But I didn't do it, and neither did Evelyn Curry, the girl who's being electrocuted tonight for it. Who is the murderer? B. Carroll, singer at the High-Low nightclub. She rubbed him out for two-timing her, then framed Evelyn. Thanks for the information. That's all I know about there he is, changed back to Clark. Classic Clark Kent look. Dark blue suit, red tie, and the hat that they had way back then. That's all I know about the attempted lynching. Well, do I get the job? You're okay, Kent. Report to work tomorrow. Clark Kent drops in on the High-Low Club. She'll be on any second. As B sings her number, she does not realize she is being closely observed by the greatest exponent of justice the world has ever known. How's that for hyperbole? But again, here you see rather spare backgrounds, some detail. But again, a nice figure, very nice figure. Again, not a whole lot of detail. Later, when she enters her dressing room, "Say, what are you doing in my room?" "Waiting for you, naturally." "I thought you might be interested in learning. I know that you killed Jack Kennedy." "What kind of nut are you anyway?" "Get out of here before I call the manager." Kind of a nut. Yeah, I'll say he's a nut. I meant to point something out. Here. Like over here. Because it's coming up. What I want to point out. The red boots. Standard red boots. Just like on the cover. And the red boots he's known for. There's a good shot. Standard red boots. I'll point out what's coming up before I call the manager. Of course, here we don't see any boots. "Sims told me everything. How you shot Jack, then framed Evelyn." "You attract me. Couldn't we talk this over?" "You're wasting your time. I'm only interested in seeing that you get what's coming to you. You'll regret butting into this." "Yes, I killed Jack Kennedy, and he deserved it. But you'll never tell anyone. You're not going to leave this room alive." Dun dun dun! Out darts Superman's hand. at terrific speed, crushes the automatic barrel out of shape. You little vixen. Are you ready to sign a confession, or shall I give you a taste of how that gun felt when I applied the pressure? You're hurting me. I'll get the chair for this. There she is. You can't really necessarily see that much, but she's writing it right there. I'll get the chair for this. You should have thought of that before you took a human life. The governor will be interested in hearing what you've got to say. And coming over the radio here. Special news bulletin in half an hour. Evelyn Curry is to be electrocuted unless the governor reprieves her. We haven't much time. Corny little plot device. Yeah, but it works. Now here we go. Now we get into some more action. A tireless figure races through the night. Seconds count. Delay means forfeit of an innocent life. The governor's estate finally is reached. Make yourself comfortable. I haven't time to attend to it. Now notice right there. It's red boots. The very next panel. Don't know if you can see it very clearly here, but he's wearing tie boots, and they're, with lacings around his feet, around his ankles, and it's blue. All blue. They weren't at the best of continuity. The governor's estate finally is reached. Oh, I read that one. What do you mean by knocking this hour of the night? I must see the governor. It's a matter of life and death. See him in the morning. I'll see him now. And crashes through. Look, notice though, except for like dialogue, there's no real noises like bangs and pows and stuff depicted here. Onomatopoeia is what that's called. This is illegal entry. I'll have you arrested. Answer my questions. Are you going to take me to the governor? No, I won't. Then I'll take you to him. Help, 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 help. See, here's still blue leggings, more like. And his whole figure seems darker than it had been. Yes, this is the governor's sleeping room. Don't think you're going to get away with this outrage. It's locked. Yes, and made of steel. Try and knock this door down. And smashes right through that steel door. It was your idea. What's the meaning of this? Evelyn Curry is to be electrocuted in 15 minutes for murder. I have proof here of her innocence, a signed confession. Believing the governor menaced by a madman, the butler produces a concealed weapon. Reach for the ceiling, quick! Put that toy away. I warn you, take another step and I'll shoot. Bam! Looks like he got him almost in the face there. The bullet ricochets off Superman's tough skin. This is no time for horseplay. And see here down in the corner, how much time, little clock, how much time is left. Don't you realize I've proof she's innocent and you alone can save her? Let me see those papers. Here it is again. Less than 10 minutes. 9 minutes to go. Hurry, connect me with the penitentiary. Stop! The governor has pardoned her. Of course, that's a mistake. It wouldn't have been a pardon. It would have been a reprieve. Because a pardon would be with an admission of guilt. Thank God I told you I was innocent. He's gone, disappeared. Yes, but there's a note he left. Sir, you'll find the real murderess bound and delivered on the lawn of your estate. Next morning, as Kent leaves for the newspaper upon which he works as a reporter, well, that's kind of reminding us what they've already told us. But again, it's an older style. And see, the way the panel continuity and the story, whole sense of visual storytelling is different. Have you heard the Curry girl is innocent? Let me see the paper. Good, I'm not mentioned. Miles away in the governor's private chamber. Gentlemen, I still can't believe my senses. He's not human. Thank heaven he's apparently on the side of law and order. Spare back rooms. Some nice figures, though. The Daily Star office is reached. You wanted to see me? Yes, be seated. This says editor. Apparently he may not have had the name George Taylor yet. Did you ever hear of Superman? What? Of course he's surprised. He might be thinking that somehow they're tying him together with Superman in some way. Reports have been streaming in that a fellow with gigantic strength named Superman actually exists. I'm making it your steady assignment to cover these reports. Think you can handle it, Kent? Listen, Chief, if I can't find out anything about this Superman, no one can. It's an inside joke, of course. Hurry, Kent. A phone tip. Wife beating at 211 Court Avenue. I'm on my way. Just a plot device. Who's going to call in a tip to a newspaper about a wife beating? If anything, they should domestic violence should go to the police. And the time frame here is this just his first day, his second day? What? At 211 Court Avenue. Hold it. What do you want? Don't get tough. Tough is putting mildly the treatment you're going to get. You're not fighting a woman now. Slam. Slammed him right up against the wall. You asked for it. With a sharp snap, the blade breaks upon Superman's tough skin. And now you're going to get a lesson you'll never forget. Oh, he fainted. Fainted dead away. And initially, this is the kind of stuff Superman dealt with. Of course, this is like basically his first adventure. Still, blue feet. You look at the S here. The whole S image changes quite radically sometimes from panel to panel, and it's all yellow. Hearing police sirens, Superman hurriedly donned street clothes over his uniform. It would be just too bad if they searched me. What are you doing here? Hello, Captain. I arrived to find the place like this. Looks as though our friend Superman had dropped in to pay a visit. See there, just transition. Very clunky transition. Go from there to here back in the office later. What do you say to a date tonight, Lois? Here we've had no idea that he even knew Lois Lane heretofore. I suppose I'll give you a break for a change. That night. Why is it you always avoid me at the office? See? Why you always avoid me. So he must have been there for several days, if not weeks at this point. But they don't let you know that. Please, Clark, I've been scribbling sob stories all day long. Don't ask me to dish out another. She's not the nicest person, but she did consent to go on a date with him. But she apparently thinks quite highly of herself. Oh, maybe it's justified. We do know that Lois is a tough girl. Nice looking dame there, eh? Guess I'll cut in. Wait, Butch, suppose her escort don't like it. So what? If he gets nasty, I'll push his face in. This is gonna be bad. Oh, I read that wrong. This is gonna be good. That's what I meant to say. I said, run along, I'm cutting in. But this is not a robber's dance. Trying to get Flip? Move quick if you know what what's good for you. Clark, are you going to stand for this? Reluctantly, Kent adheres to his role of a weakling. Be reasonable, Lois. Dance with the fellow, and then he'll leave right away. You can stay and dance with him if you wish, but I'm leaving now. Yeah, you'll dance with me and like it. Why? Good girl. Good for you, Lois. Lois, you can. Yeah, especially at this point in time, especially in a comic book or other media representation of fictitious characters. It's pretty unusual for a woman to stand up for herself and not just stand meekly by for some big strong hero to come and rescue her, which still happens anyway. Fight, you weak-livered polecat. Really, I have no desire to do so. Wait, Lois. Of course, she's always upset because Clark is Clark, but he's got to be. But Lois, you asked me earlier in the evening why I avoid you? I'll tell you why now. Because you're a spineless, unbearable coward. Ooh, that's gotta hurt. That's gotta hurt. Let's get out of here. I'll show that skirt she can't make a fool out of Butch Matson. And then a few minutes later, this should probably have been on the other side. A hidden figure observes Butch and his fellow hoodlums leave the roadhouse. Still, the laced footgear, and still blue. Butch forces Lois's taxi into a ditch. Pull over there! Let me go. Get in that car and shut up. This is kind of surprising in a way that this guy must be a really bad guy, probably a gangster or something. There's no qualms about kidnapping a lady right off the streets. Someone he doesn't even know just because she slighted him. What burns me up is that I let her yellow boyfriend off so easy. Well, maybe you two may meet again. Then I hope it'll be soon. Hey, watch out! Someone's standing in the road ahead of us. Ha ha! Watch me scare him out of his wits. Look out! You'll hit him! Superman hurdles the oncoming auto. Here, it's so dark you can barely see his figure as he leaps over the car. Butch, step on the gas. He's chasing after us. It's the devil himself. Butch's car leaps forward like a released rocket, but is easily overtaken by Superman. Of course, faster than a speeding bullet. They hadn't said that about him yet, but we know he's fast. Yow! The occupants of the car are shaken out, and the car itself smashed to bits. Now here we have the iconic image that was used on the cover of Action Comics #1. And here it is again, right in context. And that same image was used in the movie Superman Returns. It was iconic. Next, Superman overtakes Butch in one spring. Just a minute, Butch. Do you mind? This will take but a few seconds. Gee! No. Get me off of here. Okay, I'll cut you loose. Don't! Yeah, don't cut him loose. You needn't be afraid of me. I won't harm you. Here's a very rough indication of the S on his chest. All these others on the previous page were barely, if visible at all. Bearing Lois in his arms, Superman heads toward the city, depositing her upon its outskirts. I'd advise you not to print this little episode. And next morning, but I tell you, I saw Superman last night. Are you sure it wasn't pink elephants you saw? Lois treated Clark colder than ever. I'm sorry about last night. Please don't be angry with me. Yeah, she is. Clark receives an assignment. See, in this story, there just does not seem to be an overall plot. It just seems to be a series of events. Clark receives an assignment. Kent, the front page is getting so dull, I've even got to headline card games. There's a war going on in a small South American republic, San Monte, and to stir up news, I'm sending you down there as correspondent. Take along a camera and try to send back some good shots with your articles. Kent takes a train, not toward San Monte, but to Washington, D.C. Woo-hoo! In the capital city, he attends a session of Congress. Doesn't say why, I have no reason. Sitting in the gallery. Is that Senator Barrows speaking? Yes. Upon leaving the Senate chambers, Clark Kent snaps a picture of a furtive man speaking swiftly to Senator Barrows. When can I see you? I told you never to speak to me in public. My home tonight at 8:30. At the morgue of a local newspaper. Who's the chap speaking to Senator Barrows? Why, that's Alex Greer, the slickest lobbyist in Washington. No one knows what interests back him. And there we are, 8:30 p.m., outside Senator Barrows' residence. An eavesdropper listens in on an interesting conversation. Here again, very spare backgrounds, just kind of indicating. And even the figure is not well defined, except by the color, but I mean details. I've told you to avoid me in public. What would people think if they knew I had anything to do with you? Quit sputtering. I had to see you. Tell me, do you think you'll succeed in pushing the bill through? There's no doubt about it. The bill will be passed before its full implications are realized. Before any remedial steps can be taken, our country will be embroiled with Europe. So, giving us a heads up, letting the reader know that in this world, stuff's going on in Europe. Of course, this is 1938. You know, the Nazis and the Italians. Fine. We'll take care of you financially for this. I suppose you're going to be well taken care of yourself? You bet he will. Here's just a very rough indication of that S. Still, some nice figures. Has a good sense of anatomy, and pretty consistent on depicting the individual characters. Upon leaving Barrows, Greer is confronted by Superman. Who is behind you in corrupting Senator Barrows? I don't know what you're talking about. So you're one of these silent men, huh? We'll see whether you'll talk. Let go of my hand. Your foot will do just as well. Takes him off again. Still, the blue laces. And still, very spare backgrounds. Schuster's artwork is relatively crude. His style had not evolved yet. Of course, you see this a lot in the early comics, because a lot of the cartoonists working in comics at that time, well, they were people who couldn't get work on a newspaper or sell a strip to a syndicate, just like what happened with these boys with Superman. So they took work with it where they could get it. But they worked more. The more they worked, they refined. It became more polished, more professional, most of them. Stop! Stop! We'll be electrocuted. No, we don't. No, we won't. Birds sit on telephone wires, and they aren't electrocuted. Not unless they touch a telephone pole and are grounded. Oops, almost touched that pole. Look, the Capitol. Let's pay it a visit. Take me down, take me down. What a magnificent view. Help, help. I wonder if we could jump all the way to that building. We don't even see the building. No, don't. Despite Greer's frenzied protest, Superman leaps out into the night. Missed, doggone it. Is to be continued. And that's all we're going to read on this story, at least for now. And so begins the startling adventures of the most sensational strip character of all time, Superman, a physical marvel, a mental wonder. Superman is destined to reshape the destiny of a world. Only in Action Comics can you thrill at the daring deeds of this superb creation. Don't miss an issue. And we'll go on to that another time. But like I was saying, here, still the laced boots. But as I said, Joe Shuster's art style matured and developed. Now, the boy, I call him a boy, he was a young man. He's in his 20s. He drew more, but I tell you, these guys, here you can see there, they have creative credit, which is good. But that first story, they only got about $150 for it. And DC took the rights of the Superman character and just paid them the $150. But the guys, they kept writing and kept working. And of course, Superman became incredibly popular at that time. Had a radio show, radio series, animated shorts at the theaters, and eventually movie serials. And they made a lot of money for a while. They had set up their own studio. They worked out of there, hired some assistants. But when they tried to keep possession of their own creation, they were legally put out. And then after that they had trouble. They also had created the DC character of the Spectre, who is still a major figure in the DC Comics universe. And they also created a goofy character called Funny Man, which I know nothing about, and stuff like that. But they basically lost their rights, had difficulty with work for hire. Now, Jerry Siegel wrote other things, various other publishers. I don't know what all. At one point, I think it was in the late 50s and or early 60s, when superheroes were becoming popular again in the comics. Jerry Siegel wrote, I don't know if he created the character, but he at least did some writing on a character called Steel Sterling, who was another superhero. He was also called the Man of Steel. And he wasn't from another planet, though. He got his powers in an accident. And that was for Archie Comics, which was, I think at that time, was still being called MLJ. And they had a whole stable of superhero characters. But Joe Shuster had difficulties because he was losing his eyesight. Eventually, he was losing his eyesight, and he had to take other work where he could. But like I said, this book, I was going to go on and show you some more of Joe Shuster's artwork, because this here is his work at the beginning of his career. And this book here, this novel, was published in 1942, and he did the illustrations for it. And I wanted to show you this because you can really see how his work matured. Here he is. He did this painting, and there are a few other paintings in here, full color paintings of Superman. A really, really nice job. as you can see, bolder, more mature. It's very nice. Nice colors, nice use of color. The detail in the background. Of course, this is a painting. This isn't a comic book drawing. But I wanted to point that out to you, and I can find it here quickly. He did some black and white illustrations. Here we go. Here's the chapter heads. As you can see here, this is a very loose pen and ink drawing of Superman, but it's intentionally loose and bears little resemblance to this style here. But it's a really nice figure, really nice use of blacks, line thickness, thick and thin, and nice and loose, intentionally loose. Here's another one. Looks really nice. And then compare that also to this black and white drawing that Joe did. Compared to these, it's very nice, very mature style. Good figure, very good figure. Nice composition. Nice storytelling in just that one picture. Really good, really good. Now I'll come back another time and finish the story, and we'll talk a little more. So, thank you for joining me. And remember, comics are culture.